What if I told you the days of Noah were not only about wickedness, but about something supernatural that returned to earth? Enoch described a corruption so deep that heaven itself had to intervene. And Jesus gave a warning that should shake every believer. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be again. So the question is terrifying. Are we living in that pattern right now? Stay with me, because what Enoch revealed may explain the world we are watching unfold today. Most people think Noah's time was simply about violence, about sin, about mankind turning away from God. But Scripture hints at something far darker. Genesis 6 tells us, "The sons of God saw the daughters of men." A boundary was crossed. Something that was never supposed to happen, happened, and the earth became corrupted in a way that went beyond human evil. That's why judgment came. But Genesis only gives us fragments. Enoch gives the full picture. The Book of Enoch describes beings called the Watchers. They were not human, they were heavenly beings assigned to observe, but they rebelled. Enoch says they descended to earth, not only to corrupt, but to teach forbidden knowledge. They revealed secrets mankind was never meant to possess, weapons of destruction, sorcery, manipulation of creation, knowledge that accelerated darkness. Enoch writes that this knowledge spread like poison until the world became spiritually unrecognizable. And that was the true horror of Noah's days, not just sin, but supernatural contamination. Here is where it becomes chilling. Enoch doesn't present this as ancient history. He presents it as a warning, because Jesus himself said, "The last days will resemble the days of Noah." So ask yourself, what defines our generation? Technology advancing faster than morality, knowledge without wisdom, boundaries collapsing, truth being corrupted, a world obsessed with power. Just as Enoch described, a generation repeating the same pattern. And the most dangerous part, most people don't even recognize it. Just like in Noah's day, life continued until judgment arrived suddenly. Enoch speaks of a final age when deception would cover the earth. When spiritual blindness would increase, when corruption would return, not in the same form, but with the same essence, a rebellion against God's order. And that is why this message matters. Enoch is not about obsession with mystery. Enoch is about discernment. A warning that history is not random, patterns repeat and prophecy unfolds. So what is the response? Fear? No. The Bible never calls God's people to panic, it calls them to awaken. Jesus gave this warning not to terrify, but to prepare. Because just as Noah was preserved, God knows how to preserve his people. The days of Noah are not only a warning of judgment, they are also a reminder. God is still in control, and the return of darkness always comes before divine intervention. Enoch revealed what most churches never explain. The watchers were real, the corruption was real, and Jesus said the pattern would return. The question is simple. Do you believe we are living in the days of Noah again? Comment below. Enoch was right. And if you want the next video, where we uncover what happened to the watchers after the flood, make sure you subscribe now, because this is only the beginning. You just heard the warning, the watchers, the forbidden knowledge, the pattern of Noah repeating right before our eyes. But that leaves us with a question that most teachers are too afraid to ask. If the sin was spiritual contamination, if the judgment was the flood, then what happened to the cause of the corruption? What happened to the watchers themselves? The Bible hints at an answer, but Enoch gives us the chilling conclusion, and it changes everything about how we view the world today. Genesis tells us the flood wiped the earth clean. But the source of the corruption, the watchers, the sons of God who rebelled, they weren't destroyed by water, they were imprisoned. The Apostle Peter, in his second epistle, confirms this. He writes that God did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood, but cast them down to hell and committed them to pits of darkness, reserved for judgment. The word Peter uses there is Tartarus. It's not the final lake of fire. It's a prison, a holding cell in the abyss. Jude, the brother of Jesus, confirms it again. He speaks of the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, just as Enoch described. And he says they are kept in eternal chains, under gloomy darkness, until the judgment of the great day. So the flood ended the rebellion on earth, but the rebels were locked away. But here is the terrifying part of the prophecy. Remember what Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah. If the pattern is repeating, if the spiritual contamination is returning, if the world is being reshaped by forbidden knowledge again, then what does that imply about the prison? Enoch doesn't just describe the fall of the watchers. He describes their release. The Book of Enoch prophesies that at the end of the age, when the generation of deception arises, the prison doors would begin to open. This is not mythology. This is the spiritual reality behind the chaos we are seeing. Think about it. The days of Noah were defined by the physical presence of corrupting spiritual entities interacting with humanity. For 2,000 years, the Church has understood that those specific entities were bound. But if the days are repeating, if the pattern is cycling back, are we standing at the threshold of a release? Look at the world. You see the knowledge accelerating. You see the boundaries collapsing. You see humanity once again obsessed with power it was never meant to have. Genetic manipulation, artificial intelligence that mimics consciousness, the occult moving from the shadows into the mainstream. These are not just human mistakes. These are the symptoms of a spiritual contamination that is returning. This is the knowledge that the watchers brought the first time. And it feels like the teachers of that knowledge are being let out of the prison. Why is the world accelerating toward madness so fast? Because the pattern of Noah isn't just about human wickedness, it's about supernatural interference reaching a critical mass. That is the hidden war. That is what Enoch saw from the beginning, a cycle of rebellion, imprisonment, and release. And that brings us to the most important question of all. If the Watchers are being released, if their forbidden knowledge is flooding the earth again, if the days of Noah are here, then where is the ark? Noah's ark wasn't just a boat. It was a place of preservation in the middle of judgment. In the New Testament, Peter tells us that the ark is a symbol. It points to something greater. It points to baptism. It points to salvation. It points to Jesus Christ. The flood couldn't touch those in the ark. The judgment couldn't touch those covered by grace. And in the same way as this spiritual storm intensifies, as the ancient darkness tries to reclaim the earth, there is only one place of safety. It's not a building. It's not a political party. It's not a survival bunker. It's a person. His name is Jesus. The days of Noah are a warning that judgment comes. But they are also a promise that God always provides a way of escape for those who will enter it. Enoch was right about the past. The prophets were right about the future, and Jesus is standing at the door right now, in the present. The question isn't whether the pattern is repeating, it is. The question is, are you in the ark? If you want to understand how to prepare, not with fear but with faith for the days ahead, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are going to uncover what the ark really looks like in a world that looks just like Noah's. The storm is coming, but the door is still open.